and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 2025 Summer Annual Conference of the Korean Association for Interior Studies, KAIS, opening ceremony. We are very delighted to see so many distinguished scholars and participants have today. My name is Hyun Ji-jung from Yonsei University and Director of General Affairs of KAIS. Because we're gonna start the first afternoon session in an hour, so we have to finish all the remarks, and also lunch as well. So first, I'd like to introduce our president, Professor Tae-young Kim, who will deliver the opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming our president.
안녕하세요. 한국국제정치학회 회장 김태형입니다. Good morning, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and honored participants. I am Tae-young Kim, the current president of the Korean Association of International Studies. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this timely and important academic conference, Navigating Korean Diplomacy Amid Uncertainty in an Era of Complex and Multiple Crises, held at the beautiful port city of Yeosu. We gather today at a critical juncture in global affairs, one defined by violent conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, geopolitical realignments, intensifying US-China strategic competition, persistent regional tensions on the Korean Peninsula, the transnational challenges such as climate change, pandemics, economic volatility, and technological disruption. These crises are no longer isolated. They are interconnected, compounding, and constantly evolving, requiring agile and forward-looking strategies. In this complex landscape, South Korea stands at a pivotal crossroads. As a middle power with global aspirations and deep regional entanglements, Korea faces the dual challenge of safeguarding its national interests while contributing meaningfully to international peace, stability, and prosperity. This conference brings together a diverse group of scholars, practitioners, and policy thinkers to critically assess how Korean diplomacy can adapt, innovate, and lead amid growing uncertainty. We hope to explore not only the constraints Korea faces, but also opportunities it may harness through adroit implementation of a realistic and principled foreign policy rooted in both pragmatism and values, promoting alliance management, multilateral engagement, and economic statecraft. Let this conference be a space for a vigorous debate, fresh ideas, and collaborative thinking. The stakes are high, but so too is the potential for diplomacy to shape a more stable and cooperative regional and global order. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to the rich discussions ahead. 와주셔서 감사합니다.
And next will be a welcoming address by Lee Jong-guk, the Executive Vice President of Korea Foundation. Please join me in welcoming him.
President Kim Tae-hyung of the Korean Association of the International Studies, distinguished panelists and guests. It's a great honor for the Korea Foundation to co-host the 2025 KAIS KF International Conference here in this beautiful city, Yeosu, in partnership with the Korean Association of the International Studies. First, I would like to warmly thank all of you for joining us here today, especially our esteemed scholars, experts, and young academics from around the world. I also offer special appreciation to KAIS and its staff for their hard work in organizing this important event. The theme of this year's conference, Deepening Global Security Challenges and Korea-Japan-China Cooperation, is both timely and vital. As the global order continues to shift, the impact on security, the economy, and diplomacy is becoming more complex. This conference offers a valuable opportunity to examine these regional and global challenges from a range of perspectives. Security on the Korean Peninsula is increasingly affected by the global developments, including the war in Ukraine, escalating tensions in the Middle East, and also rising US protectionism. At the same time, our region faces added pressure from supply chain disruptions, the climate crisis, and rapid technological changes such as the rise of AI. Against the backdrop, deeper cooperation among Korea, China, and Japan is more essential than ever. Korea's role in the Pacific region continues to grow in importance, not only in terms of regional security, but also as global competition intensifies in the areas of economy and technology. This year marks two important anniversaries: the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation from colonial rule and the 60th anniversary of diplomatic normalization between Korea and Japan. These milestones remind us how crucial timely and meaningful cooperation is among the three Northeast Asian countries to ensure peace and stability in our region. Since its founding in 1991, the Korea Foundation has worked to promote international exchanges and mutual understanding. Engagement with China and Japan remains a core part of our mission. One key initiative is the Korea-Japan-China Vision Group, launched in collaboration with the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat. Since 2023, this group has held conferences annually to explore ways to build trust and cooperation in politics, the economy, and culture. In these uncertain times, it is more urgent than ever for Korea, China, and Japan to build strategic consensus and lay the foundation for lasting cooperation. During these three-day conference, I look forward to hearing from experts and scholars on crucial issues such as space security, the evolving Indo-Pacific security landscape, and nuclear proliferation. I'm confident that your insight will offer valuable ideas for building stronger trilateral cooperation and contributing to global security. Once again, and finally, I would like to thank President Kim for his leadership and all of you, our scholars, experts, and students for your active participations in this wonderful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Lee. Next time will be a group photo time, which is very, very important for our donors and funders. So please, our distinguished guest, and also our president and former president of KAIS, and also the committee members, please come forward here. Let's come here for head table number 4, all of you. And 고모님들도 앞에 나오시면 됩니다. 네. 그렇게. 네, 죄송합니다. 저희가 후원하신 분들한테 아주 중요한 자리이기 때문에 저희가 식사를 앞두고 제가 준비를 해야 되니까요. 사진 찍도록 하겠습니다. 네. 네, 저희 이번 국제정치학회에 많은 정부 부처와 또 기관에서 후원해 주셨고요. 네, 저희 다시 한번 감사하는 마음으로 이 말씀을 드립니다. 학회 이모님들도 계시면은 나오셔도 좋을 것 같습니다. 네, 잠시 후 점심 식사가 이제 제공될 건데요. 잠깐만 참아주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 저희 한 번 더 찍으셔야 됩니다. 네. 네, 감사합니다. Thank you. Thank you. 네, 감사합니다. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, next is congratulatory remarks by Dr. Kim Jina, the second Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and she is also our member of KAIS. So, but because of the governmental affairs, she should not be able to join us today. But she gave us a videotape for our congratulating our annual conference.
Distinguished members of the Korean Association of International Studies, esteemed guests from home and abroad, ladies and gentlemen gathered here in the refreshing sea breeze of Yeosu. I'm Jina Kim, Second Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. It is both an honor and a privilege to address you at this important academic gathering. In a time of profound global turbulence, the theme of this year's conference, Navigating Korean Diplomacy Amid Uncertainty in an Era of Complex and Multifaceted Crisis, is not only timely but deeply meaningful. It calls upon us to engage in critical reflection of the current realities, confronting Korean diplomacy and the strategic direction we must chart for the future. Today, we stand at a historic inflection point. The strategic rivalry between the United States and China has long surpassed traditional trade disputes and now extends across the realms of technology, information, and values. Economic interdependence, once held as a cornerstone of peace and shared prosperity, is increasingly subject to weaponization. The competition over semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and digital standards is rapidly dissolving the boundary between economics and security, shaking the very foundation of the liberal international order. In this era of compounded and overlapping crises, diplomacy must transform from reactive engagement to anticipatory and strategic action. The new Korean government is committed to playing a responsible and proactive role on the global stage. At the core of our foreign policy lies pragmatic diplomacy, anchored in the balanced pursuit of our values and interests, the enlargement of Korea's strategic space, and the steadfast promotion of our national interest. Korea's unique geopolitical and economic position as a bridge between advanced and developing nations affords us a distinct role in shaping and promoting international norms. Accordingly, we are building tailored frameworks of cooperation across the Indo-Pacific, Europe, and the Global South. These efforts prioritize supply chain resilience, technology partnerships, and sustainable development. Simultaneously, remain steadfast in our commitment to the global public good through the promotion of human rights, the delivery of humanitarian assistance, the advancement of development cooperation, and decisive action on climate change. In confronting these complex and evolving diplomatic challenges, the insights of the academic community are indispensable. We look to you for rigorous interdisciplinary research, for theoretical innovation that can inform governance in the face of transformation, and for mechanisms that swiftly translate scholarly insight into actionable policy. Your analysis and guidance will continue to shape the decisions not only of governments, but of the international institutions entrusted with global peace and stability. More than 4 centuries ago, Admiral Lee Sun-shin declared, "I still have 12 ships." Even in the gravest of moments, he refused to surrender hope. Today, the Republic of Korea possesses far more than 12 ships. We are anchored by a resilient economy, a vibrant democracy, outstanding human capital, and scholars of your caliber. In this age of profound uncertainty, your wisdom and counsel will serve as our compass. I trust that our discussions here in Yosu will yield valuable insights and practical outcomes. I wish you all continued health and every success in your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, the congressional remarks is not cost-free. Actually, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is one of the biggest funders for this conference, and we are expecting more funding for the next winter annual conference for the Minister of Finance because she's our member of this association. In fact, this conference is funded heavily by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Korea Foundation, also Che Institute for Advanced Studies as well, and many other governmental agencies and ministries. Thank you for all of them. Next will be our keynote address by Professor Bipin Narang. And let me introduce Professor Narang briefly. Professor Bipin Narang is the Frank Stanton Professor of Nuclear Security and Political Science and a member of the Security Studies program at MIT. And from March 2022 and August 2024, he served as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense and then Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, which is oversight over the U.S. Department DoD's strategic capacities, including nuclear, space, and missile defense and cyber policy. For his service, he was awarded the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service, which is from the website. His title is Surviving the New Nuclear Age. Please join me in welcoming Professor Narang.
I'm going to take this out. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here in South Korea 1 year after my last trip, which was for the third NCG in June of last year in Seoul, and so much has changed since then. I want to thank KAIS, KF, and especially the Che Institute for supporting my visit and this trip. It's an honor and a privilege to be back with my South Korean friends. We had a very special relationship, an ironclad commitment to the alliance and extended deterrence when I was in office. Now I get to speak in my personal capacity, so I can say whatever I want. And I want to be clear, I'm saying everything in my personal capacity. And this conference could not come at a better time. An article that my colleague Pranay Vadi and I just published in the journal Foreign Affairs called Surviving the New Nuclear Age was going to be sort of the title of the talk. And all my research is on nuclear weapons and extended deterrence. But the point of the article, and I think what's relevant for this conference, is that nuclear weapons can no longer be relegated to the purview of just nuclear experts and nuclear wonks who know the ranges and the trajectories of the KN-23 and the KN-27. Nuclear weapons are back, and back with a vengeance, in geopolitics writ large. It is central to geopolitics, international relations, and nuclear weapons touch every piece of American grand strategy, whether it's China's growth in its nuclear arsenal, Russia wielding nuclear threats on an almost weekly basis as it continues its war of aggression against Ukraine. In the last month alone, we've seen India and Pakistan essentially go to war and trade extremely intense conventional fires under the nuclear shadow, with Pakistan using its nuclear weapons as a shield to unleash terror against India, and India trying to push the line how far it can go. Israel and the United States trying to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapons capability. Nuclear weapons are touching every corner of the globe, including South Korea and the Korean Peninsula. So I wanted to talk a little bit and hone in on one topic, and I also want to leave time for questions because there's no free lunch, and I look forward to any questions you may have. But I did want to talk about extended deterrence and the historic commitment the United States uniquely takes on for its extended deterrence commitments to NATO and to its Indo-Pacific allies, particularly Australia, Japan, and South Korea. And the reason why the United States has committed to extend its nuclear umbrella, its full range of capabilities, but including nuclear, to NATO and to its Indo-Pacific allies, is not out of altruism or charity. It's good for US security. It's good for global security. It's good for the allies. So what does the United States get out of extended deterrence? One, we get a forward deployed presence. We get base access in Europe and in Asia essentially for free. We get a combined deterrent against the common adversary. Strength in numbers. If we're distracted by a conflict in the Indo-Pacific, our European allies and partners can continue to deter Russia. Likewise, if we're in an intense conflict or crisis in Europe, it's better to have a posse in East Asia that can help continue to deter China and North Korea. And so deterrence is strengthened by extended deterrence. Over time, another key reason why the United States has committed to extended deterrence and why it's been so successful has been for nonproliferation. It is America's greatest nonproliferation tool. Of the at least 34 odd allies to whom we extend our deterrence, I would argue only one has chosen to pursue and acquire its own nuclear weapons capability because it did not believe in the credibility of the American extended deterrent. Anyone know who it is? Yell it out. France. I think France would be the lone exception when de Gaulle said he never thought the US would trade Pittsburgh for Paris. And I would argue actually that de Gaulle got American nuclear strategy wrong. And at the heart of our extended deterrence and at the core of our entire nuclear strategy, US nuclear strategy, enduring nuclear strategy, is not that any American president be willing to trade an American city, Seoul for San Francisco or Pittsburgh for Paris, but that we've developed a strategy that can protect the ally and the US homeland so we don't have to make that choice. I would argue our strategy is better characterized as we can save Paris without losing Pittsburgh. We can save Seoul without losing San Francisco. And that is, I think, at the heart of our extended deterrence credibility to our allies and partners, and is rested on a capability to be able to do that, not just nuclear. Oftentimes, extended deterrence is conflated strictly with nuclear capabilities. And while nuclear capabilities are absolutely critical to extended nuclear deterrence, to being able to manage regional employment in the Indo-Pacific, something we really haven't had to deal with until Kim Jong-un's sprint and China's expansion, but also then be able to limit damage to the US homeland with a robust strategic nuclear arsenal based on the triad, the submarine-based force, the ICBMs, and the bomber-based force. And so those capabilities are very important, both conventional and nuclear. To convince the adversary, the common adversary, in this case North Korea, there's no pathway through which Kim Jong-un can achieve his political military objectives through the use of force. And we would deny him the ability to achieve those political military objectives and protect South Korean citizens and American citizens while doing so. It's also rested on a political will to continue to extend our deterrent to our allies. Now, in the South Korean context, over the past couple of years, there have been issues on both sides, I would argue. During the previous Yoon administration, there were, I think, real considerations about the credibility of the American nuclear extended deterrent and whether the US would be willing to defend South Korea against a North Korean nuclear attack, particularly as the US homeland became more exposed. And our commitment in the Biden administration was born out of the Washington Declaration between President Yoon and President Biden, that we would firmly commit to the defense of South Korea through the full range of American capabilities, including nuclear. And one of the innovations that came out of it was something that, in my view, was long overdue, which was an extended deterrence vehicle that really gave South Korea insight into our extended deterrence thinking and planning in the region. And it was modeled on the work and the efforts that we had in NATO and with Japan and Australia. And we had a previous extended deterrence architecture which was created in the early 2010s, but which was no longer fit for a 2023 world. And so the Department of Defense and the Ministry of National Defense created the NCG, the Nuclear Consultative Group, which is a real augmentation in the extended deterrence relation, particularly between the DoD and the MND, and established dozen-plus work streams to really elevate and provide inputs, both the US side into South Korean conventional thinking and investments. And South Korea has made tremendous investments in its conventional capabilities to contribute to extended deterrence, TTXs, educational streams, and it concluded a year ago with the signing of the guidelines document, which institutionalized the NCG as a vehicle through which we would manage our extended deterrence relationship. And it was good for South Korea, and it was good for the United States. Because for the United States, extended deterrence is, if you're a MAGA, America First supporter, extended deterrence is the most cost-effective way to help deter an adversary because of the common and unified front you present to an adversary through the access of capabilities and conventional capabilities from the ally, geography, and you're preventing the spread of nuclear weapons. And if there's one thing President Trump and President Biden, I think, agree on, and they don't agree on much, is that they both oppose the spread of nuclear weapons. I don't think President Trump can look at what happened with India and Pakistan, with Israel and Iran, and think more nuclear weapons, particularly or even by our allies, is good for American security or their security. And so I think the US will remain committed to our extended deterrence architecture because it is cost effective, it is a powerful deterrent, and it is the best non-proliferation tool we have. I hope South Korea will remain committed to the NCG and extended deterrence as well, because frankly, there are no alternatives. If South Korea were to choose to pursue its own nuclear weapons, well, look what happened to Iran. North Korea and China get a vote also, and one doesn't just acquire nuclear weapons overnight. And there will be a period of deep vulnerability as a state pursues nuclear weapons, whether it's South Korea or Saudi Arabia or Poland or Ukraine. The adversary gets a vote. The very adversary that you're trying to pursue nuclear weapons to deter is going to try to stop you from getting it. And then, even if you do get nuclear weapons, you're saddled with the stability-instability paradox, which many of the scholars and distinguished academics here will know inside out. It will incentivize conflict on the Korean Peninsula as both sides try to push the line as to how far they can go conventionally without tripping nuclear thresholds. And you have to ask yourself, is that a world that is more secure for Seoul and South Korea? I don't think so. So I think, and I'm reasonably confident with the new government, that there will be a realization that the NCG and the extended deterrence relationship was deeply in South Korea's interests, and that South Korea benefited from it. And I'm also confident that the United States, and President Trump just went to the NATO summit where he left, I think, with a great appreciation for the value of NATO and allies in Europe, will have the same appreciation for the contribution allies make to American security. And it is the most effective tool we have to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, which I think is a very, very high priority for the president himself. And so I don't know, I don't speak for any government, but just looking at the extended deterrence relationship logically, I am optimistic that both sides will see the value in what has been a historic, decades-long extended deterrence relationship and alliance partnership that goes well beyond nuclear, conventional and nuclear. And adjustments to conventional posture may or may not happen on the Korean Peninsula, but actually don't have an impact on the extended deterrence relationship. One can modernize and adapt the conventional capabilities and modernize and adapt the nuclear capabilities, but the goal of deterring the common adversary, I think, will remain. And as we wrote in the Hudson Che report, as we think about the future of South Korea, North Korea relations and the prospects for diplomacy, I'm not typically accused of being the most pessimistic person in the room, but I think the prospects are grim at the moment. I think Kim Jong-un's relationship with Russia and with China don't give him any incentive to start good faith negotiations. And so again, the only alternative, I think, for the US and South Korea is to try to strengthen the extended deterrence relationship, build leverage, and think about what South Korea and the United States would want as and when Kim Jong-un is ever ready to have negotiations of good faith, if that ever appears. So with that, that's just a piece of sort of the larger article, which I encourage everyone to read, on surviving the new nuclear age. But I think for this audience, and also very personally, I spent a lot of effort and time trying to strengthen the extended deterrence relationship between the United States and South Korea, and I think we made a lot of progress. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that it'll continue. And there's always tendency to overreact, and we've gone through a lot of domestic political changes on both sides. But I am optimistic that when both governments look under the hood and see the results of those efforts, they will see it's in both their interests and their mutual interest to continue with a robust extended deterrence architecture. And we now have the vehicle with the NCG to work together to create that extended deterrence architecture that is in our mutual interest. So let me stop there. I appreciate the opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I wish you a great conference. All of the young academics who are working on these issues, whether it's geopolitics, international relations, or nuclear weapons, we are going to need your expertise in the future. We lost a generation in the US, and we can no longer afford to lose any more talent, because it is all hands on deck in the US and in South Korea as these issues hit us like a hurricane or a typhoon in the coming years. And so thank you for your efforts, and I wish you a very, very successful conference. So we have some time. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions, or you can just eat. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thanks for your service for the country and for the alliance. Thanks, sir. So the first question, what should we expect and should not expect from Mr. Colby writing nuclear posture review? Can you give us a little
I don't
hint
speak.
ahead?
Yeah, no, I'm not even going to touch that one. So Bridge is a longtime friend of mine, and Bridge is a generational talent. And he has a very clear worldview. It prioritizes strengthening deterrence against China, which is continuity from the Biden administration. If you looked at the Biden administration national defense strategy, China was the pacing challenge. Russia was the acute threat. And in a lot of ways, all the domestic politics aside, I think you've seen this continuity over time about the U.S. trying to prioritize the Indo-Pacific, less Europe, less the Middle East. Now, obviously, world events get a vote, and the last week, I think, has shown that that it's not as easy to leave the Middle East as U.S. policymakers may like. October 7th, the horrific attack on October 7th, changed a lot in the Biden administration. So I won't hazard a guess, but I suspect you will see very thoughtful, clearly laid out, logical approaches to prioritizing, from a defense perspective, the Chinese challenge, which is generational. I mean, we've never faced a peer competitor in the way that China poses to the United States. The Soviet Union was a peer in only one sense of the word, nuclear. It wasn't an economic peer, it wasn't a technological peer. China is a peer in every domain. Saw the space, I mean, I had space policy, saw cyber, AI, manufacturing, and nuclear. China is the pacing challenge. And so I think it is reasonable for the Undersecretary for Policy to, realistically look at the global challenges the United States face and prioritize the one that is probably the one, that we haven't historically faced before. So I wouldn't hazard a guess. They're doing a national defense strategy, and so I would read that very carefully.
Thank you.
Patrick?
식사하시면서 들으시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 네. So it's really hard to resist the temptation for eating lunch, but we give more time to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to say that Dr. Vipin Narang is just a great scholar, a great former official, future official. I slept better at night when he was in office, and I'm sleeping well now knowing that he's educating the next generation on these issues. But Vip, two tough questions for you, one on extended deterrence and one on non-proliferation. The deterrence question is what's just happened with the UK on the F-35.
Yeah.
And speak to the implications of what's just happened in that sort of underappreciated announcement in terms of extended deterrence across the Atlantic. And then secondly, on non-proliferation, when you think about South Korea and the United States going forward, something you were working on at the end of the Biden administration was moving toward a nuclear 1-2-3 agreement. What could that do to safeguard civil nuclear cooperation that must grow and keep it away from fueling military proliferation? Thank you.
First of all, Patrick, thank you for everything that you've done to support me and for helping get me out here. This has been a great week, and for the kind words. Thanks for the UK question, because that is, so the UK announced that they were purchasing 12 F-35As, reducing the number of F-35Bs that they're buying by 12. So they're buying the same number of F-35s, but they're changing the composition, so 12 of them will be F-35As. And you think, who the hell cares? What does that mean? The F-35A is the only F-35 platform that can be certified for nuclear delivery. Now, in their announcement, the UK was explicit that they would join the NATO nuclear mission. And those would be dual-capable aircraft. And as somebody who worked on all the extended deterrence relationships, spent a number of collective months in NATO, this is, at the moment, I think, the single biggest augmentation to NATO nuclear deterrence that's possible, given the constraints of what the US can do and what the other allies in NATO can do. Because the UK is the second nuclear power in NATO. And France, while a nuclear power, is outside the NATO nuclear bodies. And the United Kingdom does not have flexibility in its nuclear posture. It only has a sea-based capability. And so the United States is the nuclear power with the flexibility of having an air leg and a regional deterrent capability with the F-35A in Europe. And now, as a second nuclear power, the United Kingdom has rejoined that mission. And that is important because as we think about deterring multiple adversaries, China and Russia and North Korea, if there's a scenario in which we are in a crisis or conflict with either North Korea or China, the United States, when I say we, the United States is in a conflict in the Indo-Pacific, and then Russia decides to use the opportunity for opportunistic aggression against Ukraine or the Baltics or what have you. At the moment, it's possible that the United States would be unable to provide the credible regional deterrent capability if we are deep in a crisis in the Indo-Pacific. And so now with the United Kingdom getting in the business, it increases the credibility of that regional deterrence posture because of their possession of the strategic nuclear force as well. And so as the second nuclear power, that flexibility, I think, is the greatest single augmentation to NATO nuclear posture possible. And it's near term. And it doesn't obviate or exclude longer term options. But I really, really want to congratulate the United Kingdom for making a bold but important decision with very few downsides. To me, it was a no-brainer. The question about the 123 agreement. Now, that's not something that I worked on closely, and I follow it. Follow it mostly from the sidelines. But the advantage to a 123 agreement, once you get through the domestic laws associated with it and the Atomic Energy Act, is it actually, I think, reinforces non-proliferation commitments, because it provides a technical and legal framework for some parts of the fuel cycle that would be monitored, that would be transparent, and would provide civil capability for South Korea, and make it clear it's not for military purposes. And there are various configurations under which it could take place. But I think there is a world in which 123 agreements can actually enhance non-proliferation obligations. And I think there is an opportunity there, if the Trump administration wants it, to push on that door.
계속 질문을 한 분만 더 짧게 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 한 분씩 해주시고요.
Thank you, Dr. Narang. It's Haesung Kim from Appalachian State University. So thank you. So this is not going to be a free lunch, so don't worry. Well, I think your message was very clear, and then to provide the reassurance to the Korean audience. And because you're expert on this matter, I 100% believe your assessment that U.S. extended deterrence has a capability to fully save Seoul instead of, while not sacrificing San Francisco. Capability.
I'm from San Francisco too, so this one's near and dear to my heart.
Capability, I trust it. But what we don't really see, especially from the Trump administration, second Trump administration, is that the resolve. So we really kind of see different messages. If U.S., I'm glad to hear that you are very optimistic, even about the Trump second administration. However, the message that we see is that what about the burden sharing? South Korea has to increase their burden sharing, right? So that is kind of inconsistent messages about full commitment to the extended deterrence. So can you, if you can give your own view as well as provide any evidence from the inside view, that what is really the assessment about the resolve?
I don't have any inside view, but I appreciate the question. I will say, it's not as if the Biden administration did not pursue increased burden sharing from allies. So NATO, at the NATO summit yesterday, except for Spain, everyone announced 5%. That doesn't happen overnight. Now, the president does deserve a lot of credit from getting from 3.5 to 5, at least a commitment. But the Biden administration worked to increase burden sharing in a variety of ways across the alliances to increase investment, including with South Korea. So burden sharing is not a new concept, nor is it a new approach from the United States. Style might be different, but I would say, again, there's continuity in sort of what the U.S. position on this is, which is allied contributions to the extended deterrence relationship are really important. And South Korea does invest a lot in conventional capability that is very valuable for the extended deterrence relationship. And I think highlighting that is very important for this administration. I think it's still early in the Trump administration. And at least on foreign policy, I think the staccato of crises that have occurred over the last several months, India, Pakistan, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, no peace, I think may start conditioning the president and the administration to think about both nuclear weapons and quote-unquote the risk of allied proliferation and the value of extended deterrence in different ways. And so I don't think you can have lived through the last 4 or 5 months in the U.S. and thought, you know what, more nuclear weapons in the world are better. More countries having nuclear weapons is better. And I really, really think that the president himself has an aversion to the spread of nuclear weapons. And once the connection is made that the best way to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, particularly to allies where you have influence, is by strengthening a very cost-effective, time-tested, tried-and-true strategy of extended nuclear deterrence, I think that's a winner-winner chicken dinner. So that's where my optimism comes from, without any inside knowledge. I mean, that to say, you know, whatever happens today could be flipped tomorrow. But I think when it gets down to sort of the logic, and once that logic becomes sort of apparent and becomes policy, it's still early in the administration. So every administration takes half to a full year to get all the right personnel in place to be able to manage the alliance. And so to expect, you know, everything to be clicking on all cylinders right off the gate, no administration, Democrat or Republican, does that.
Okay, our final question is here. So.
Thank you so much, Vipin.
Keep it easy.
So I absolutely agree with the fundamental role of deterrence in South Korean and U.S. security. What I find a little problematic or paradoxical is beyond a certain sufficient level of deterrence, when you get to enhanced deterrence, sometimes even excessive deterrence, it can be counterproductive to diplomacy from my perspective, and it basically gets into the security dilemma, right? North Korea uses our deterrence demonstrations as justification for its own provocative actions, which undermines diplomacies. That's the problem I have, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that nature.
It's a great question, Frank, and I do think the balance between deterrence and provocation is a very fine line. Now, I'm mostly a capabilities person, and I don't think that adjustments, when I talk about sort of strengthening deterrence, I will admit I have a more capabilities-based approach. As we think about the emergence of China, particularly the ICBM fields, now North Korea and Russia, from a nuclear policy perspective, my biggest sort of anxiety or concern was, what if we have to face these threats simultaneously? What are we trying to deter in a scenario where we are facing them simultaneously? And that doesn't necessarily mean more, you know, gangbusters number of nuclear weapons, but you may need more to be able to ensure that if you can deter one if you're in a crisis or conflict with another, so they don't engage in opportunistic aggression. And the mix of capabilities matters, right? So we've never really had to think about deterring regional nuclear employment in a maritime environment. And that's where the congressional mandate for the SLIC-AMEN, right, the submarine launch cruise missile, comes from. And I think there's increasingly deterrence value in a maritime-based capability, regional deterrence capability, because the options we have in NATO, like the B-61, are not suitable for the Indo-Pacific, I would argue. So I don't think any of those are necessarily provocative. But what I think you're hinting at is, do we appropriately marry our signaling to our broader deterrence strategy? And I think that is something that, you know, left hand, right hand absolutely need to do better about working on, and threading the needle between what is, you know, an assurance signaling or deterrence signaling versus one that will unnecessarily provoke an adversary. And there is a balance between them, and I think we always need to be attentive to ensuring that we're on the right side of that balance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
All
right.
Okay, I'm sorry for my poor time management. It's already our second panel has been already started at this moment. But again, please give Professor Narang another round of big applause. Thanks so much, Professor Narang. I hope the next panel chairs will more good at time management than me. So it's already time passed, so I'm going to give you more 15 minutes for your enjoyable lunch. And then the next panel will start originally scheduled to start 12:40. It's already passed, but it's going to be starting 12:55. Okay, so we'll have a little bit more time for the lunch. And then for the next panel chairs, please please time manage, and then you can spend 10 more minutes. We have a 20-minute buffer for the next panel, so you can use 10 more minutes, which is 5 minutes less than the original time schedule. Okay, enjoy your dinner, lunch, and then the dinner will be start here at 7, here at the same place. Okay, thank you so much. And we look forward a productive and engaging conference. Thank you so much.